This week on the WriterCon podcast,
I realized at some point at about 2 or 3 in the morning, one dark night of the soul morning, that there was a simple equation. And the equation was, you wear them down or they wear you down. And that is the equation and the advice that I would like to pass on. You wear them down or they wear you down.
welcome to WriterCon, a gathering place for writers to share their knowledge about writing and the writing world. Your hosts are William Bernhardt, best-selling novelist and author of the Red Sneaker books on writing, and Rene Gutteridge, best-selling author of over 30 novels and screenplays.
Hey there, writers. Welcome to WriterCon 2023. As you can hear, we are coming to you live from the Grand Ballroom of the Renaissance Waterford in Oklahoma City. I'm joined today, as usual, by our fabulous sound engineer, Jesse Ulrich.
Hello. Woo! Yeah. Thank you. That was nice.
And, of course, my wonderful co-host, Rene Gutteridge. We have, as you may be able to tell, we have been having a fabulous time here at WriterCon with all these writers and agents and publishers and everybody else. Rene, you keeping your head above water?
Yes.
Give me a little more, come on.
Way above water. This has been so fun.
Okay. Jesse, you have been charged with the arduous task of recording all of the sessions, and I think there's more than 80. Are you staying on top of it?
I am. I wish more speakers would talk into their microphones, but other than that, we're doing great.
I started to wander away when I was doing my talk yesterday, and I said, wait, no, stay on the microphone.
Thank you.
We're taking advantage of the fact that we have everyone gathered together in one place. So instead of the usual interview guest, singular, we're having an interview panel with the brightest lights, some of the best people in the writing world, like yesterday's keynote speaker, New York Times-bestselling author Tosca Lee. Today's keynote speaker, New York Times-bestselling author Lisa Gardner. The author of Old Fears and about 50 other books. The book, but Old Fears is the one that will not die, John Wooley. And stand-up comic and author of a book whose title I cannot say on the air, but it's a wonderful book, Barry Friedman. I told you this would be live as you saw it. We will talk to this panel of experts about everything that's happening in the writing world today after the news segment and a few testimonials from the people at WriterCon. Jesse, take us away.
My name is Noah Helsey. This is my first year at WriterCon. My favorite two events were definitely open mic night and karaoke night, which were huge hits and had a lot of really fun, positive feedback from that. And then I also really enjoyed getting to pitch to a couple agents and publishers, and got a lot of really good feedback, and I'm planning to continue those conversations moving forward.
Hi, I'm Scarlett Hoffman. I'm 13 and I've published 2 books. WriterCon has been a great experience for me because I've gotten so many helpful tips and it's just been wonderful, and it's going to help me so much with my writing career, and I really encourage everyone to come, and it's wonderful. The people here are so nice, and I've gotten so much out of it.
My name is Shaylin Caproy, and I write under the pen name Atlas Faye. I really loved all of the panels and the pitch slam, obviously, for WriterCon. And honestly, I can't wait to come back next year. This was such a summer camp experience, but like, only full of things that I love, and like creative writing and everything. Just seeing everyone again is enough to make me want to come back, but definitely for the panels.
We have talked before about the huge influence that TikTok and its subdivision BookTok is having on the book world. Well, we've got another BookTok sensation that has now become a very successful film. It's been out for a couple of weeks now, and it's a hit. That's Red, White, and Royal Blue, the film adaptation of a 2019 novel by Casey McQuiston. This romantic comedy follows the bisexual son of the first female U.S. president and Prince Henry, the younger brother of the heir to the British throne. This movie happened because the book generated a huge following on BookTok, which is, of course, the literature-loving corner of TikTok, where fans have shared their obsessions and videos tagged, in this case, hashtag red, white, and royal blue, which has received more than 500 million views. They are now talking about turning Red, White, and Royal Blue into a stage musical. Jesse, could you please arrange for one of my books to be embraced by the BookTok world?
Sure, I'll do my best. As listeners of this podcast know, I'm an expert at TikTok.
You know, we talked a couple of weeks ago on the podcast about how TikTok is now becoming a publisher, which is true. And it's just incredible. You go into Barnes & Noble now and you'll see BookTok special. It'll have its own section or table or something. It's really incredible. Rene, you have boldly, on this very podcast, admitted to occasionally spending some time on TikTok. What is the appeal there for book readers?
Well, I think it's an amazing place because you can, first of all, get quickly to what's happening in the book world, which is nice. Mm-hmm. And you can see what is touching other readers. I think that's really fun. I think it's a great place, a great thing. I'm not opposed to it.
Well, no, I'd just love it a lot more if they were doing my books, but congrats to this one and Colleen Hoover and everybody else. Okay, news story number 2. We have also, of course, talked about AI a lot in recent weeks because I know people are concerned about AI-generated books. Now we have AI being used to ban books, which is not exactly where I thought this would be going. I mean, when I was worrying about all the things AI can do, like replacing me, I didn't see this coming. But now to the list of what AI can do, you can add regressive academic censorship. In Iowa, a school district reportedly deployed AI software to identify and remove 19 books from school libraries to comply with state legislation there that has prohibited titles with, and I quote, descriptions or visual depictions of a sex act, end quote. This book, I mean, you might, well, let me just explain how that's been employed. The law's been used and has led to the hasty removal of such horrors as Toni Morrison's Beloved and Maya Angelou's Where the Caged Bird Sings, books I never expected to see on any of these, maybe in kindergarten, but beyond that, I wouldn't expect that to happen. AI models apparently scanned libraries' books and flagged them to administrators. Here's a quote from someone in the Iowa legislature. Frankly, we have more important things to do than spend a lot of time trying to figure out how to protect kids from books. At the same time, we do have a legal and ethical obligation to comply with the law. Okay, Rene, now that our future computer overlords are deciding what we can and cannot read, how do you feel about this?
Well, all of our listeners know how I feel about this and how it makes me crazy. So, but yeah, I mean, well, we know how I feel about this, right? They can't see my face right now, but...
They can. That's a camera. See, you use computers in your work. Are you going to let them tell you what you can and can't read?
I'm less mad at the AI and more mad at the state of Iowa for using the AI instead of just doing the work themselves of banning the books. If you're going to ban them, you have to take the time and read the books first. So...
Like with human eyes?
Yeah.
All right, third and final news story, one that took me by surprise. I've been in the book world a long time, but I didn't even know this was a thing. But apparently there has been a huge surge in hockey romance fiction. 2 words I never expected to put together in the same sentence, hockey and romance.
And soon to be banned by AI.
Listen, it is the sexiest ice sport.
The niche world of hockey romance novels is getting mainstream attention after the wife of an NHL player criticized book fans who she said had made comments and videos on social media about her husband that were, and I quote, predatory and exploiting, end quote. First, there was BookTok. Second, romance is a big part of BookTok. And now we have the broader sports romance category and its subdivision, hockey romance books. Recent hits have included Anna Szabo's Scoreless Game, a love story between two longtime friends who are players on the fictional team, the Pittsburgh Griffins. I don't know, are there any fans of hockey romance? Can anybody speak to this?
Anybody?
Tosca, are you a big hockey romance person?
I live in Nebraska. We do not have, I guess we have some hockey, but no, I can't say that I've really been exposed.
Yeah, well, good luck to them.
I think we know what our friend and guest of the podcast, Amy, would say about these books is, are they spicy?
Right. So, Jesse, do you and Michelle go on romantic hockey dates?
All the time.
Is that right? That's right.
That's what we do.
Rene, you seem like you'd be a huge hockey fan. Am I right about this?
Yeah, I am. I'm a huge hockey fan. Being from Oklahoma, it's just huge here.
Yeah.
As well as
we have a team. I've been there, yes.
I mean, Arizona also has a team.
Yeah.
Should they, though? It's Arizona.
Thank you for alienating every Arizonan listener to the podcast. Okay.
Yeah.
No. All right, enough with this news. Let's get to this fabulous panel of writers we've got. Jesse, cue up the music. I think many of you know we have a traditional first question, but since this panel of friends of the podcast have all answered it before, I'll just ask, does anybody have anything they want to add to my first question, which is always, if you could offer writers one piece of advice, what would it be?
Yeah, I can do that.
Okay.
1983, Ron Wolf and I sold a book called Old Fears. It was auctioned. Franklin Watts got it, which is no longer around. Franklin Watts and Doubleday had actually a bidding war on it. Ended up getting a $15,000 advance. This is 83. And we thought we had it made. It's a book called Old Fears, which is still in print. Thank you, Bill. It took me 9 years to sell another book. And I realized at some point, and probably beer was involved, but I realized at some point at about 2 or 3 in the morning, one dark night of the soul morning, that there was a simple equation. And the equation was, you wear them down or they wear you down. And that is the equation and the advice that I would like to pass on. You wear them down or they wear you down.
Cool. All right, I'm going to toss another question. I will direct this to Lisa Gardner, but anybody feel free to jump in. How, and perhaps more importantly, why did you get started writing? I mean, you must have realized there were simpler ways to make a living, right?
Yes, and my father made a long list of them.
Yes. Your dad and mine went to the same school, I think.
Yes. I owe my career spectacularly to ignorance. Big fan. It is often better not to know what you're about to get yourself into in this business. Huge reader. Decided one day when I was 17, I could write a book. Mm-hmm. Took 2 months and I wrote a book. And it was really spectacularly bad as well. Went off to college so I could get a real job and make my father happy. And actually found this thing called the writer's market and how to sell a book. And again, never met an editor, an agent, or an author. So I was like, cool, I'll follow the steps. I'll sell a book. I sold a book. Made enough money to buy fries with that. So my father wasn't totally wrong. Worked a day job for a very long time, but continued to write.
And how many books now?
I stopped counting a while ago, but 30-something, I'm going to say.
Wow. How about the rest of you? Anybody else got a good how I got started story?
I told my dad I wanted to try writing a book, and he said that he would pay me what I would have made working at the bank that summer, which I was lined up to do. If I wrote my first novel that summer, treated it like a job, and wrote it full time, and I didn't want to work at the bank. So I wrote my first book, and it was very bad.
A friend of mine once told me that you want your advance to cover the lunch it was discussed over. I think you're right at first because you want to or need to, and then you continue writing because somebody actually cares to read you.
Oh, very
And the
nice.
motivation is that you have an audience and you owe them something. But the initial has to be because you have a desire to tell a story and you hope to God that somebody will care.
That's good.
I like that. That's actually really very well said.
Okay, our next question, Tosca, I'll start with you. Can you describe a mistake that you made early in your career, or I would add early in your style of writing? Either of those.
I submitted my book to Writer's House with a 23-page synopsis. That's a don't. But the other thing is, when I sold my first novel, I had really not worked on my follow-up books while I was waiting. After I wrote my first one, it took 6 years to sell. I could have written a lot of things in that amount of time. And so I wish that I had plunged ahead and not just kind of sat around waiting.
That's good. That's good.
Go ahead. I've always thought there's only two things in life you can control is your weight and your wardrobe. That if you were heavy, you could just stop eating food, and if you wore stupid clothes, you could stop. But everything else in life, you needed help: relationships, sex, marriage, real estate, whatever. So it seems to me the only thing you can actually control is what you write, and you spend more time writing than thinking about writing. Mistake I made is I kept thinking that what I had to say about any particular topic would be interesting to anybody, and it wasn't until it was interesting to somebody. And they decide when that is. It's sort of a performance art. It's very performative. It's not really as solitary as I would like to think it is.
And Barry and I have talked about this a lot. Matter of fact, we've done panels on it. It's not interesting just because it happened to you. And that's something that everybody needs to know, including me. And it becomes then, if you're writing especially nonfiction, it becomes then, are you a good enough writer to make something interesting? Or, as we were talking on the way down here, is something inherently interesting enough to make your book good?
Or you're famous.
Or you're famous. Those are the three ways that it can break. And I will say, my biggest mistake was being too influenced by Raymond Chandler and H.P. Lovecraft together. That's what informed my first novel called Demon Wind, and boy, it is horrible. Matter of fact, I had a person tell me a while back, a very good friend, say, you ought to write your autobiography and call it How I Became a Professional Writer and Earned Hundreds of Dollars.
So when I decided I actually wanted to start earning possibly money while being a writer, I was getting, I wanted to go from hundreds to maybe several hundreds. It was a high bar. And I decided to get my first agent, and she advised me to go out because it was very timely and write a really great dark thriller with, a burnt out former Marine, and he was going to help save this woman's life, and, dark redemption arc. Worked on this, felt so good of myself, turned it in, and her first words to me, that man should have killed himself a long time ago. Certainly by chapter 1, I was expecting it. So I learned a lot about revision work and that you can't overcommit to a premise.
Yeah. Okay, so Lisa, we'll start with you. What's your process for starting a book?
Generally procrastinating on the computer. See, ignorance will only take you so far, and then procrastination becomes your friend. Mm-hmm. Inevitably, there is something I read, and because I'm a thriller writer, often it's crime, often it's odd crime, often it's those moments when you're like, who the hell would do that? And then, I have to know who the hell would do that. And so the ideas get off and running. My favorite part is research, so I try to find professionals who can explain who the hell would do that. And the writing process begins.
Mm-hmm.
John?
Well, first of all, I would say that ideas are overrated and execution's underrated. Because any of us in here could sit down and come up in one day with a list of book ideas that would probably last us the rest of our lives. Execution is what matters. And so it's not so much the idea. I've got a backlog of ideas, probably you do too. We've all got a backlog of ideas. It's actually the execution that I've found is the most important thing. How many of you, no show of hands, Been to a party, find out you're a writer, which is always fairly easy, isn't it? What do you do? Well, I'm a writer. And they say, you know, I've got a great story. I'll tell you that story, and we'll just split the money. You write it, we'll split the money. Well, overrated.
How I start is the question. I also procrastinate. I procrastinate by doing anything but writing, and I'm really good at cleaning out drawers and closets. And then I eventually kick it into gear. Usually the deadline, I start panicking, and also I reach a point of self-loathing where if I don't start, I will feel bad, and I will feel bad about the way that my husband and family are looking at me. So, and I'm bothering them by cleaning so much. So that's how I start. Yeah.
I think two things. One is you kind of forget, I forget the process of it, because that does tend to slow me down, and that does tend to make me procrastinate. My daughter one time called me and said, "You never write anything just to write." I said, "No, who does that?" And she says, "Everything you write has somewhere to go," which is a great motivator when you have somewhere to put it. But the other thing that hit me was, and I don't know why I keep thinking about this, I have no idea if this is true, but I heard somewhere that Bob Dylan wrote Mr. Tambourine Man in 35 minutes. I also heard somewhere that Leonard Cohen took 5 years to write Hallelujah.
That's because he kept adding more verses, right?
And I thought, all right, well, if you decide I'm going to write 3-4 hours a day, that's a perfectly fine way to approach your craft. On the other hand, if you write Mr. Tambourine Man in 35 minutes on a Monday, to me, you can take the rest of the week off. So look at your output to see what kind of process you need. You may not need to write every day. That may be a great start for most people. But some people, really, if the light from God hits you, but it only hits you for a few minutes, that's when you write. Mm-hmm. And if God misses you, he misses you.
Okay, I think that's interesting, though, because the other analogy you often hear for writing is that it's like going to the gym. Right. And when you take a big break off, it's hard to get back to it. Whereas if you start forcing yourself, okay, today I'm going to do it, tomorrow I'll do a little bit more, it just becomes habit. It becomes a form of abuse. You become adjusted to it. You expect to hurt a little every day, and you don't question it as much. So
you're right, and I actually want to be that kind of writer. I mean, I really do, but somehow it just seems to me that writing when there's something that has to be written, or, again, you look at output. You've written 30 some odd books, so no one can question your process. I knew somebody, and John knows her too, who in 12 years wrote 80 pages. And clearly that process is not working. But if you look at what you put out, whether it's published or not, if there's material, I don't think you have to worry about the process. You've got the process down instinctually. But I agree with you. I think I would like to be the kind of writer who sits down every day. That whole great Hemingway story about standing at the podium, and he starts with and after 4 hours this one morning, he just wrote the hell with it. Again, that's a good way to start if, again, you're not writing anything.
Okay, here's a question I've heard a lot of people asking in one form or another this weekend. So you write a book after you're done procrastinating, and then you revise it, and then you revise it, and then you revise it probably 10 more times. And it's always possible that you could revise it again. How do you know when it's done? Tosca, got some thoughts?
I think it's hard to know because, no book is ever, even when it's published, any book, any piece of writing, it's just a snapshot in time. It could totally change. It could always be improved. But at some point, you just have to say, all right, that's it. We're going to the shutter's going to click. This is the snapshot as it is today. And today, this is the best I can make it. And the best I can make it means that I've usually enlisted the help of an editor friend. Every book I turn in, before I even turn it in, I have an editor friend go through and read. And that is the best I can do today. But the best I can do tomorrow might be different, and that's why I always do enlist the help of experts who can see the mess that I've made while I've been writing.
So I worked as a business consultant to pay the bills the 10 years I was already published, but, for the hundred of dollars. And we used to have an expression, are you actually making it better? Or are you just rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic? So that's what I always start to ask of myself. Is this actually improving it, or am I just playing with deck chairs? And then because I can never decide the answer, I rewrite it again.
And I would also say that, the fourth draft is always better than the first, but the 11th isn't always better than the 7th.
Yeah.
And so, there is that point. Our good friend who edits me when I used to write geology, I don't know anything about rocks, but he was my geology editor. He said the best thing about deadlines, this is Vern, the best thing about deadlines is you may not be done, but it's done. So there are times, and again, you say, okay, Monday I'm done, and then you send it to an editor, and he or she says, would you revise all this? And you go, sure. So you're really not done until somebody publishes it, and even then, as you say, you look at it and go, oh my God, oh my God. Yeah, what was I thinking? Yeah.
I was an entertainment writer at the Tulsa World for 23 years during the last great days of the newspaper business, and I often had a deadline or two a day, and you had no time. As a newspaper writer, you had no time. You polished it like a diamond, the best you could do, and took it out the door because there's something coming up behind it.
Okay, John, we'll start with you. We're talking marketing now. How much do you do? What do you definitely do? And what do you definitely not do?
You see my friends Bill and Barry. Barry's you're his cousin, right? Yeah. Laughing at me because
chuckling when Rene picked you for this question.
Yes. Chuckling evilly, I might add.
Can I just add? John has said more than once, "What's an app?"
I am the world's biggest Luddite. However, I am doing well enough with those hundreds of dollars to hire a couple of people who do online stuff for me. Mm-hmm. And so I have a website, I have a newsletter, I have all of these things. The thing I had to get really, really used to, and Barry and I have talked about this a long time, you all probably know this, is you have to give away your words. You have to write online for free, and as my people tell me, if I can be so, fatuous, my people tell me you have to give them something they like, and if they like you, then they will support you by buying your books. So I'm writing all of this free stuff, and I wrote fanzines when I was a comic book collector in the 60s. It feels like going back to that. But you have to do that now. And that's the thing I had to get used to. You have to give people stuff for free. And I just hate it.
I enjoy the marketing. I really do. Probably because it's a good procrastination for writing. I like that part. One of the best things that happened is we got this big dog who's more popular on my social media than I am, but people tune in to see what the dog is doing a lot. So if you're really stumped, get a cute animal and try that. But beyond that, people just want to connect, and that's really all it's about. And they want to connect with you in your writing, they want to connect with you in your stories, and they want to feel seen and known. And so when they feel like you connect with them wherever, on social media, BookTok, whatever it is, they will always want more. So.
They do want you. They want to get a piece of you. And I don't have people the way John does.
You don't need people.
I need people.
You do need people.
Yeah.
People. You need people.
The other world. Yeah, that's a good idea for a song. I think you have to get over whatever problem you have with self-promotion. It's just part of the game now, that you write something and it's not anybody else's job to get it out to people, it's your job. And social media makes that somewhat easier to do. And when you get people who respond to you, I don't know how you feel, Tosca, but I think at some point engaging with people who are already attracted to you is a very good way to market yourself. Is not to shut them out, is not to put up a wall between you and your readers, not until you can. I mean, Philip Roth didn't have to talk to people, and Joseph Heller didn't have to talk to people, and Joan Didion didn't have to talk to people. Well, until we get to that point, I think you have to engage again with your readers, because it is a performance. between you and them. I'm a stand-up comedian, and one of the mistakes that comedians make is that it's not a monologue, although it seems like one. It is a dialogue between you and the audience. And when the audience gives you back something as a stand-up comic, that's the direction you go, because you're in the room with them. It's not just you. And so when you write, it's not just you either.
Well, I'm going to have to agree with John on this one. I was kind of really hoping this internet thing would go away. It's like,
I don't think it's going to.
yeah, it's like, I don't want to talk to the people in my house. Why do I want to talk to people in that house and that house over there and that house over there? It makes no sense to me. So I'm with Tosca on this one. I have dogs. I inform them every day, earn your kibble, come on, sit, look cute, or do something stupid, don't care which. I'm getting a third dog on Wednesday because I think the first two are getting a little tired of all the photo shoots. And I'm sure we'll all live happily ever after, and they won't earn much kibble.
So both of you use dogs on your social media?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, I tried using a child, but they really don't perform for kibble, just so you know.
Just for the record, my cat shows up at least once a week, so it works for felines as well. All right, panel of experts, do you have any parting words of advice for all the writers and aspiring writers listening to this podcast? Tosca, you got some thoughts?
I look over and everybody's looking at me. It's just very intimidating. Oh, okay, yeah. My advice is, and I spoke about this earlier, is to always know your why. Always know why you're doing this, because there are days that it will be terribly hard, and there are days that it'll be terribly discouraging, and you may not want to do it anymore, or you might think, why am I doing this? And I think as long as you know your why, W-H-Y, not letter Y, that will get you through.
You know what? I was in Tosca's panel when she was doing this, or her presentation. It was excellent. It was a very motivating speech on what makes us writers and how to find creativity. And I just had this moment when you're like, what is your why? And I'm like, why do I breathe? And I think once you accept this about yourself, you're going to do this not for the money, because there's none, not because it makes any sense, because it doesn't, not to make our parents proud, let's face it. We're going to do it because we breathe. Then you just accept what happens next and enjoy your time writing.
I'm going to butcher my favorite writer, Steinbeck, here, but John Steinbeck said, the writer should labor under the illusion that what he or she is doing is the most important thing in the world, even when they know better. And again, I go back to, you either wear them down or they wear you down.
I like that.
All right, one last question for each of you. Tell us what you're working on next, or now. Tell us what's coming out next. Lisa, what you got coming out?
I just completed the revision work because I rewrite a lot. Deck chairs on the Titanic again. Latest in a series for Frankie Elkin. It's Still See You Everywhere, and it was based upon a very interesting 10 days I had on a remote atoll in the middle of the Pacific, and then the plane that could not come pick us up, which was also the plane that had the food.
I just finished the first cut of a public television documentary on the horror movies made in Tulsa, beginning in the 1980s, which started the direct-to-video horror movie craze with Blood Cult, and it's going to be televised and also going to be, we have some interest in it from distributors as well. It's called Tulsa Terrors. I wrote it and co-produced it.
Nice.
The book Bill couldn't mention of mine, Jack...
Now he will.
That one, volume 2 of that is coming out probably in January, February, and it's going to be called, wait for the movie, it's in color.
Ah, nice.
I'm writing a medieval thriller about the European witch hunts. Light reading.
Sounds fun. Thank all four of you so much for being part of this podcast, all right?
Thank you, Bill.
They liked it too. Just a few parting words. If you haven't joined the WriterCon Facebook group yet, please do so. Subscribe to the completely free WriterCon e-newsletter. And the information for the links and whatnot will be in the show notes. If you're enjoying this podcast, please subscribe and then rate or review it wherever it is you get your podcasts. it really does make it easier for other people to find this podcast. All right? You know what I'm going to say next. Until next time, keep writing. And remember, you cannot fail if you refuse to quit. And that's the final word for this podcast, coming to you live from WriterCon 2023.